This video is all about me giving you honest and I hope informative information about the 3FUL Lanshan Pro tent. Alright, so coming up in this video I'm going to address three potential elephants in the room regarding this tent. The first one is condensation. So I've had this tent out in my favourite condensation inducing environment, so we'll find out later how it actually did. Second one would be pitching one of these tents and managing the tents in high winds. So I've actually had the tent out in measured 30-mile-an-hour winds. In fact, it was so windy that I was getting wind warnings when I was trying to fly my drone. So this tent doesn't come seam sealed. But I actually made the decision to get 3FUL to do it. So I decided then to take the tent out in high winds there when it was raining heavily. So we'll find out later on in the video as to whether the tent is a leaker or not. So look, I know you guys love mods and accessories, so I've made a few modifications to the tent and bought a few accessories for it. So a bit more on that later as well. So the video will also cover why I've been taking this tent camping and not my Helibergs, which actually cost about 4 times as much, and then I'll sort of conclude the video with my final thoughts. So this is a single skin trekking pole tent that relies on tension and pegs to set it up. The tent is not freestanding, but it actually only needs 6 pegs in order to secure it. In my opinion, even a freestanding tent will need 4 pegs to secure it, and all tents will need to be secured. So for me, I'm not a big freestanding tent fan. Now, a lot of people will say, well, look, with a freestanding tent, you can set it up and then move it around to the best location. Personally, for me, I will sort of look at the location and the ground where I'm going to actually camp and make a decision and just decide and set my tent up, and get it right first time without having to move it around. So a freestanding tent for me doesn't really have that many benefits, but I know really at the end of the day that's up to you to decide, because we all have many different personal preferences. So the tent is very spacious, lightweight, and has a very small pack size. Now if you are someone who already carries walking poles, then I think a trekking pole tent is a complete no-brainer. To have a 2-person tent for it's 1,030 grams and the low pack size is pretty amazing. It's not just as light or compressible as the high-end Dyneema composite fabric or DCF tents, which cost 3 times the price, but the weight is still really, really good. So look, if you're someone who doesn't have trekking poles, then the total weight is about 1,300 grams for the trekking poles in a complete setup, and that's like tent, poles, pegs, the whole lot, which is very light. So now let's look at some of the specific features on this tent. So the fabrics, the main tent is made from a 20 denier sil nylon. The silicone is coated on both sides, and that actually makes the tent, the fabric, about 4 times as strong as 3FUL's standard fabric. The elephant in the room with the silicone coating is that it makes the fabric actually very slippy, and you can't tape seam it. So that means it comes from the factory, not waterproof. Now I know this is an issue for a lot of people, but for me, if I can have a fabric that's 4 times as strong, the benefit of that far outweighs the hassle of having to seam seal it. Now when I say hassle of having to seam seal it, do you know what? I just decided, stuff it, I'll get 3FUL to do it, and I've done it. And as I said earlier, we'll talk about that later in respect of how effective it actually was. So obviously this is your main fabric, which is your sil nylon, and then the reinforcements here are made out of like a Dyneema composite. So again, this is super strong, and I sort of find that the way that this is attached is really, really good. And it's the same down here, so all the stress points are extremely well reinforced, and I think the construction of them is absolutely excellent. Now the guy lines here are reflective and super strong, and they also have a little glow in the dark runner on them. And these extra ones that I added in are the the Dyneema type guy lines, so they are super strong. I mean, I know these ones are 100 kilogram breaking strength, and I would assume that with the price of these on the website, as an extra that the standard ones are also exactly the same. Now, pitching the tent and setting it up in high winds, I took the tent out in measured 30-mile-an-hour winds. And like I said earlier, I was even getting wind warnings on my phone when I was trying to fly my drone. Like, it really was pretty windy. Now, I orientated the tent, after I pegged it out first of all, and I pegged it out so that it was orientated vestibule into the wind, because I think that's, the best way definitely for the tent. And really all I had to do was pop the trekking pole in, and once the front trekking pole was popped in and this was guyed out here, I mean, that was pretty much it. Now, I chose at that time, I think, maybe to have this guy line here a little bit longer, and I actually just pegged this point here as opposed to using this attachment, because I just thought pegging it would make it a little bit more secure. But really, once the front pole was in, then that was it sorted. I mean, the tent actually was very comfortable in the wind. I mean, these are the shots that you're seeing now, and you can judge for yourself. I mean, it actually was very, very stable, and I was very impressed with it. And all I had to do was then stick the second trekking pole in at the back, make a few tweaks to the guy lines, and then that was it sorted. So the next question, is this tent a leaker? Definitely not. I deliberately took the tent out on a night where I knew there was going to be about 4 hours of heavy rain, and honestly there was nothing came through the tent at all or through any of the seams. I mean, it was really, really 100% waterproof. So now, one of the bits in this video that you've all been waiting for, condensation. This tent produces no more or no less condensation than any other tent. The thing is, with single skin tents, the condensation is closer and has direct access to you and your gear. You're not protected by an inner tent. But also the thing is that you can manage that by getting a cloth and wiping it down. If you're sleeping in your bedroom at night and it's warm inside the house and cold outside, and you go and you have a shower or something like that, you've got condensation on your windows, you don't just stand and look at it. You get a cloth and you wipe it down. Well, I know that's what I do in my house anyway. You deal with it. And I personally found that I took this tent out to my favourite condensation inducing environment, and there was no doubt at about 2 o'clock in the morning I had condensation built up on the tent, and I spent 5 minutes maybe just wiping it down with a trekking cloth. I actually did have to wring it out, because it was quite wet, but it was not dripping on me. There's no point in letting it build up and let it drip on you. So you can just deal with it. And I'd done that once at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was it. In the morning time, it actually got quite windy. So if there would have been condensation on the inside of the tent, then the wind will shake it onto you, and that can be an issue. But it hadn't built up significantly, so that was happening. So I mean, it worked really, really well. Now, if you're someone who goes camping and you frequently have condensation issues, well, you're going to have those same condensation issues, but it's easier managed because you can wipe it down. And once I started kind of learned that and started doing that, then this just made it a no-brainer for me to use this type of tent on a more frequent basis. Okay. In fact, it's particularly well ventilated because the fly has a good space between here and the ground, and you've also got ventilation on both sides, and you have mesh underneath here, which will allow some condensation to run away from the tent. So this tent has a 4-season inner, which is a solid inner, and then it just has a little bit of mesh at the top. And I just personally so far have found that this has really helped seal out drafts and just give you better weather protection with no real compromise in ventilation, because the ventilation is still really good. So now let's have a look inside this tent at the internal volume. So I'm set up now inside a tent, a bit roasted to be honest, but just to give you a true indication of the space and volume in this tent, I've put in 2 mattresses, both thermarests. One's an older one, but it's just a regular in respect of width and length. This mattress here that I'm actually using is a regular, but it's a wide, and this is also a really thick. It's a big Agnes Repeat SL, and I think it's about 4 inches thick. It's a really thick pad, and that starts to give a tent like this a bit of a challenge because of the length, because obviously the higher you are, the shorter the tent is. So, you know, width-wise, these pads fit in here, no problem at all. So that's one standard one and one extra wide one. Really no worries whatsoever. And I've set this up so this is just when I lie back. This is exactly where my head would be. And, you know, I really do have, despite all this height of a pillow and the mattress, you know, I really do have quite a lot of space and volume around here. So I think this is actually really good. And then I'm going to lift the camera up now and pan it down to my feet to let you see the space at my feet from me lying in exactly this position, because I can't obviously show them both at once. So now we're just looking at the space, the realistic space that I have at the sleeping bag end of the tent. And I mean, that's pretty good. It is well away from the fabric of the tent, so the interior space in here is pretty good. The vestibules then, just a quick look from the inside of the tent, and you know, plenty of space there, and as I said earlier on, really good ventilation, and you can easily store a rucksack here, and you know, some gear as well. And the fact it has 2 vestibules is really handy with 2 people. And then just round to the offset door, you know, so the doors are offset on this, so you can then get shelter from the wind depending on the direction of the wind itself. So we're now really just looking at the pack size of this. Pretty small. I mean, I haven't actually even got these compressed that much, so this would actually compress down a lot more. I'm not one for super compressing my gear, but the pack size is pretty good. Just this whole video is not a comparison against the Hilleberg Act 2, but this is just my Hilleberg Act 2. Again, I'm not going to super compress it, but you can kind of see here, you know, there's quite a difference, you know, in the pack size. Both will compress smaller, but they're both sort of kind of loosely in their bags. And end to end there, I think this is probably just a wee bit, you know, thicker as well. So the pack size in this is really good, and that just goes so easily sideways down into your rucksack. So I want to just quickly talk about some mods and accessories for the tent. Now, just incidentally, these are the standard pegs that come with a tent, and they're actually pretty good. Lightweight aluminium, I think they're in around 12 grams, something like that. But you know, after using the tent, I just honestly really loved it so much that I wanted to get a few extra bits and pieces for it. So I bought these pegs here, and I think the peg set works out at about 20 grams lighter than what these ones would be. And they're just more like a sort of a nail type peg. I think these are the shorter ones. And I haven't actually really used them yet, but you know, they seem actually pretty strong. So pretty impressed with these, and they're really good value. For all of these sort of extras, I'll put a link in the description. And look, I don't get paid any extra from those links. It's just an easy source for you to sort of go and straight find what you're looking for. Now, I also bought a footprint for the tent. It just comes in this bag. It's around 160 grams, and it's really compact. And I'll be using that, you know, as well on any time when I'm going to use the tent. So look, just some of the other sort of modifications that I've made to the tent. I've added 2 extra guy lines, kind of front and rear, and there's no doubt that that really does give, I mean, this pole a tremendous amount of extra stability. Now, I actually got these from the 3FUL website, and I've been able to sort of add guy lines front, back, and do a few other bits and pieces as well. I also sort of thought that these loops were a bit short, so I've added in the sort of dynamo ones, you know, as well, you know, here at the front and also at the back. And I've also added a couple of loops to these sort of toggles. I always find that these are a bit of a stretch on any tent, so I just kind of add these in to sort of take the strain off the sort of bungee there. And then on the inside here, I've just added like a sort of a hanging line just to the top. So in a lot of my videos, I don't really criticize a tent, but I sort of think, well, look, here are there some areas that the tent could be improved. And I mean, there always are a few little bits and pieces. One of my pet hates in tents is lack of pockets, and this tent actually only has 1 pocket, and it's a 2-person tent, You know, it's just simply not acceptable. Not only do you need more pockets, but they need to be bigger as well. So that's just one area. Now, the zip on the main outer fly sheet, which I'll show you in a moment, is only a one-way zip, and I know sort of people like sort of a two-way zip. It just makes things a bit handier, and it means you can also have another ventilation option. And then the only other point is a little kind of like ram's head. And I know some people have had a few issues with that, and it's maybe better if it's metal, but I've just solved it by connecting the sort of 2 bits of extra dynamo cord, so I can use a pegging option there, and an extra peg at 10 grams isn't going to make much of a difference to me. So that's really it, I suppose, on the areas of improvement. I think, you know, if the tent was made any bigger, it's going to be heavier, and for this type of tent, you know, the volume on the inside and the vestibule volume is just exactly about right, in my opinion, anyway. So why am I taking this tent instead of my Hillebergs at the moment? Okay, on the day that I got this tent, I was actually planning to go camping, and I had my Hilleberg, one of my Hillebergs packed in my rucksack, and everything separated out the way that I do it. And I was really looking forward to using that particular tent because I hadn't used it for a couple of months. So this came, and I thought I would go and do a quick garden pitch just to have a look at it. Now, my garden's astroturf, and it was a really windy day, and it was honestly a pitch from hell trying to get a tent up. But you know, whenever I pitched it, I just liked it so much. It was really easy to pitch, and it had so much space in it, and I just liked every aspect about it, and it really excited me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this tent tonight. And I went and took my Hilleberg out of my pack, and I packed this one. And, you know, I had absolutely no regrets. You know, the thing is, in this tent, it's just got so much space. It's easy to manage, it's lightweight, it's well made, and it just packs really small in my pack. And provided that conditions are not going to be too extreme, I can see me using this tent more and more, and potentially some of my Hillebergs less and less. So my final thoughts on this tent, it kind of, to me, it comes down to, I suppose, well, one aspect of it is the cost of the tent, which is in and around £200 or 200 US dollars, against the function. And this tent functions really well for most of the type of camping that I would want to do. The issue I had, or the issue that I thought I had, was condensation. And once I learned how to manage that, and that went away, then there's not really any issues with this tent. I wouldn't want to be taking it out in winds, you know, much over 30 miles an hour. But it's not every time I go camping that that's going to happen. So I mean, this tent provides really, really good shelter. You know, it can be dropped lower with the walking poles to give you better shelter if needed. I've added extra guy lines in, which has made it more, you know, more stable. So the shelter aspect of the tent is really good. The accommodation of the tent is good. The structure of the tent and the way that it is made is really, really good. The pack size is good. So it's just a really, really good package, and it represents tremendous value for money. So I'm a bit late to the trekking pole party, and there's just something that's exciting about a trekking pole tent. I can't really say what it is. It just feels like you're in a slightly different type of shelter, and you're maybe a bit closer to the actual environment. Now, I will continue to test this tent, and what I'll do is I'll just put results from those tests in the actual description of this video. So just look out for that. If you pop back every month or so and have a wee look, you'll see any other camps that I've done. I'll just detail my sort of experiences during those camps, so that this sort of review of the tent and my opinion of the tent is kind of ongoing, and anything different that I come across, like a major plus or a major minus, will be detailed in those description areas. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time.